All right, pile one. So with the Five of Wands, we obviously see people in conflict here, and so that's how I'm interpreting the reversal as peace. And the moon upwards is the shrouding of the truth, but the truth is still there. It's just somehow there's an illusion that shrouds it. And so reversed, it's the truth then revealed, the illusion shattered, and what's underneath it then emerging from it. And so that it's a major gave me that indication of this truth being remarkable. It was a big truth that was being revealed or given to you. And in the Seven of Pentacles, we see someone who's getting the fruit of their labor. And so it's like receiving it, it's accepting it. And so these cards together gave me this idea of peace because of something we know, right? Because this truth that's unfolding is at the root of the matter. And because of this truth that's unfolding that you now have, there's this call, there's this desire for peace in this moment, which is why we have, and I'm interpreting that because the Five of Wands is that message that we got specifically, that these other cards are kind of what they're chiming in about. And in the Seven of truth is usually really hard to accept. It's just naturally, we just kind of suck at accepting it. It takes us a while. It's a natural thing. There's no need to shame ourselves for it. It's just how it is. And a lot of us struggle with it. In fact, I've heard the Seven of Pentacles be kind of interpreted as failure sometimes. And that's why I can see that kind of with the guy looking a little bit disappointed. And even if that's not the case, it's again just about receiving it. But again, that idea of failure kind of attaches itself to how sometimes that's the way we look at truth. When it's a really hard truth, we look at ourselves and we maybe not look at ourselves as failures for it, but we might fail to see the positives there. We might be better at looking at the negative aspects of that truth. And so that's what I'm saying, where like truth is sometimes kind of difficult. But here it's because of the attachment of this energy to the peace that I'm seeing in the Five of Wands reversed. That's why the Seven of Pentacles here, instead of feeling like something heavy, like something that's hard to accept, it's it's a peaceful kind of acceptance because of the peace I'm seeing in the Five of Wands. It's something that you desire, and so if it isn't the truth that's hard to accept, then what might be difficult or what you're accepting is what comes because of the truth, or what comes because of what you now have to do because of this truth that you now know. Yeah, hope that helped. See you for the next one. Hey, Pile 2. So, in the written version, I start out with the sun burns and shines, and that's a direct reference to Andrea Dworkin's quote of, does the sun ask itself, am I good? Am I worthwhile? Is there enough of me? No, it burns and no, it burns and it shines. Does the sun ask itself, what does the moon think of me? How does Mars feel about me today? No, it burns, it shines. Does the sun ask itself, am I as big as other suns in other galaxies? No, it burns, it shines. And why I'm talking about burning and the sun and all of that, even though the sun isn't here in these cards, is because the wands represent fire, and the Emperor is associated with Aries, which is a fire sign. And so all of these fire cards coming up give me this indication of this being a reading about fire, about passion. And the Eight of Wands is typically traditionally understood and interpreted as blessings descending upon us. And if not blessings, then just like divine energy descending upon us. It is also another interpretation is the arrows of love. So again, things that are coming our way. And love, obviously here at the House of Venus, is divine. So even the arrows of love echoes that idea that I'm talking about, with the Eight of Wands representing divine energy descending upon us. And that being the central message here is, I don't know, I got this feeling of not applying the interpretation of this being about your passion, and more specifically it being about inspiration, because that is also something that descends upon us. Inspiration isn't something that we can chase and create, like anything else, like money, we can go and create, we go and clock into our jobs and then we're going to get a paycheck for that. But inspiration doesn't work that way. There's nothing, we can have like a process or um, a way, like our specific way of like inspiring ourselves. Maybe, maybe there's like some things that we return to feel inspired. But the truth of it is that inspiration will hit when the circumstances are right, when divine timing, really. And so that's where I got this idea of the Eight of Wands as inspiration. And that definitely came in because of how there's the two cards that are coming in to chime in on the Eight of Wands are this card of impulsive action, and then the Emperor, which is also about action, being reversed. And so it being advice, not acting. The Emperor reversed, not acting, that being the advice. And the root of it all, what's at the core of this message, is the impulsive action that you're feeling with the Knight of Wands at the root of this message. And with these energies together, inspiration, and then at the root, your impulsive action, but the advice being not to act, that kind of started to paint that picture that I'm kind of giving in the written form, where it's about letting inspiration just happen, letting it come to you instead of you trying to chase it and create it, because that's just not how it works. It doesn't really matter that you really want to be inspired, or it doesn't really matter that you have all this passion and you're ready to do something with it, until the circumstances are right and you know exactly what to do with that passion, or you get a direction towards a passion. Until that happens, it's not going to happen. Like, you just kind of have to wait for it. And maybe not wait for it, but relax enough to receive it. Because wait for it kind of implies that you don't have to do anything. And that there's all these fire cards tells me that it's not just about surrendering and not doing anything. But it's definitely about relaxing enough to recognize the inspiration when it hits. And when it does, you not being so worn out, so exhausted from trying to find that inspiration, that you actually have the energy and the capacity to do something with that inspiration once it hits. Hope that helped. I'll see you for the next one. So it was really cool to look at this reading and understand that there were multiple ways of interpreting it, because it's a general reading. Because it's like, if this was for a specific person, then obviously we would hone in on one specific interpretation. But this one interpretation was so specific that I knew it couldn't be a general thing, and that was the breakup interpretation that I talk about in the written form. And why I talk about a breakup is because each of these cards together, the way that they came out, literally spells out breakup. Like, these cards, the way I'm looking at them and screaming, like looking at them, and the way they're laid out, like how these two cards are reversed and that one's upwards, and where they landed, like one's at the root, one's advice, and one is the main message. Like, the way they are laid out specifically screams at me breakup. And so, to whoever it is that's picking up on this and you're going through a breakup, I am so sorry. That's so shitty. But this right here is just a very clear cut. Again, if it's that interpretation, and we'll get to the other one in a second. But if you are going through a breakup and you're here, the message is very clear cut and a little stereotypical, but it is always nice to hear it, right? And let's just, before I get to the message, I'll talk about each of these individual cards. The Ace of Wands reversed. Now, the Ace of Wands upwards is passion itself, fire itself. And that's why when it comes up, it can, passion by itself, obviously that can be attached to another person. In fact, a traditional interpretation of the Ace of Wands with this hand wrapped around this phallic thing can indicate, sex with someone. And although that the interpretation here does apply to a phallic member, that obviously the way that I do readings here, it's all genderless. And though you and the other person, or there might not be like phalluses involved or whatever, the idea still stands of a passion being snuffed out, because the passion of the Ace of Wands is reversed and therefore snuffed out. And so this idea of passion, and that idea of that kind of lusty interpretation of the Ace of Wands attached to the Five of Swords, which is a typical card of the way that other people hurt us. And yes, it can also be interpreted as the ways that we hurt other people, and that might be the case for you in this breakup. Like, it might be like a two-way thing. I don't know the story. But because there's this idea of the Six of Cups reversed, and the Six of Cups upwards is nostalgia, so then reversed it's advice to let it go because it's in the advice position, that we have a passion snuffed out attached to the idea of letting nostalgia go, of leaving it in the past. That's kind of what gives me an idea that, if you did do something to hurt the other person, I definitely feel like it outweighs, or sorry, what they did outweighs what you did. And why I'm saying that is because the advice you're getting with this message, these three cards, is that you need to let the past go and you need to let the hurt go in order to rekindle that fire, in order to find it again. And not necessarily with someone else, which, yeah, that could be true, and if that's what you want, cool. But just in order to reanimate and recolor your life in a way that you feel is lacking right now because of the pain that you're experiencing, because of what you're going through right now. Everything might seem a little less bright, a little dim, a little kind of sad. And so in order to brighten your life up again, the Ace of Wands now brought back upwards, in order to rekindle that fire, you need to, one, address the pain that's at the root of all of this, which is, again, whether you inflicted it, whether they did, whether both of you did, whatever it is, address that at the root. And then understand that it's not about, keeping some kind of tie here, keeping some open door. Like, the Six of Cups reversed as advice really fully advises cutting the tie completely, closing the door entirely, so that there's no space for that to be possible again, for that to return. And so that's why these cards altogether really scream to me like this idea of a breakup. But if you're not going through a breakup and you felt called to this energy, then definitely, if you're feeling that lack of passion, that lack of inner fire for yourself, as the Ace of Wands reversed indicates, there is a pain, there is something you're holding on to, that, like, kind of like the figure in the Five of Swords. He's holding on to these things, and he's like not leaving space for these other people, or he defeated them and they're running away in defeat. So you can be interpreted as the person holding on to this pain, but this image can also be a representation of the pain that was inflicted upon you. This person who sent you running away, and that being at the root of this passion that has been lost, this Ace of Wands reversed. And in order to rekindle that fire, in essence, bringing that reversed Ace of Wands back upwards, you need to leave no room for nostalgia, as the Six of Cups reversed advises. Again, cutting those ties and closing the door entirely to that pain, so that your inner passion, your fire, can burn as it needs to. I hope that helped. I'll catch you for the next one. Hello, pile 4. We have here the King of Swords as the central message, with two Wands cards that are reversed. And so that immediately indicated to me how the overactive mind, which is the King of Swords, the master of intellect, because the swords are intellect, with the firm grasp that he has on his intellect and how he's his perception, that firm grasp on perception is what is not leaving any room for this Wands energy to flourish, and that's why they're coming up reversed. And to give us an idea of what to do about it, what's going on here, the fact that there's two Wands cards and they're both reversed, that synchronicity really tells me that the Wands energy does exist, and in fact is trying to make its how do I say it, like it's trying to shine through. But that firm grasp that you have on your intellect, on analyzing, on understanding everything, in a literal way, in a rational way, in an intellectual way, is what is standing in the way of these things shining through. And so at the root of this, we have the Two of Wands reversed, and the Two of Wands upwards is about knowing that we have something we want to do, and then starting to form a plan to make it happen. it's the planning phase before taking action towards anything. And reverse, then that's not even happening. We're not even grasping on to something that we want to do enough to make plans towards it. And again, this idea of grasping a little too tightly onto reality, onto, I don't want to say reality, but onto a literal way of understanding things is what's keeping you from even trying to grasp onto these other conceptual things that exist inside you, your passions, the things that you're excited about, the things that might be capable of motivating you, period, or motivating you in a different way. Um, and the so this idea of the two of wands, of us not even being able to grasp onto one a passion or something long enough to let it form a plan, or form a plan towards it, and kind of let it happen. Instead of doing that, we're grasping onto the rationality, a literal way of looking things, the King of Swords upwards. And the advice is one, okay, so kings denote a weight, a type of a sort of responsibility attached to that suit. And so the King of Swords, he can't be shamed for having such a firm grasp on the way that he sees and does things, because as a king, he's responsible for his kingdom, and so he needs to take certain actions. He doesn't have the luxury of, just sitting on what he thinks and sitting on his intellect and allowing, just sitting in contemplation, because he is called to act. He has the responsibility of having to act. And so that might be true for you. There's no shame in you not being able to give space to your passions because of how much you have to do in your day to day. But if you are trying to tap into that fire, that inner fire, please understand how that firm grasp on the way that you know how to do things might be standing directly in the way of that inner fire shining through. And so the Ten of Wands denotes upwards. The Ten of Wands upwards denotes that weight attached to the king that I'm talking about. That responsibility of having to act and having to do things the way that we're doing them now. The Ten of Wands upwards, we can see this figure like hauling this heavy load. And so reversed, the load is then dropped. And so obviously I'm not telling you that the advice here is not for you to stop doing things the way that you've learned how to do them. Because obviously it's been working for a reason. And it really isn't, no passion should be about you abandoning entirely the way that you do things right now. I mean, maybe, I don't know, but that seems a little drastic, and that's not the advice here at all. The advice instead is to allow enough relief from that firm grasp. In essence, loosen up that grasp a little bit, so that you have. Here's the metaphor I'm seeing. Instead of holding your intellect and your literal way of looking at things with both hands firmly, hold it with one hand. Don't let go of it entirely. And it's still your gift. Hold it, wield it, understand that it's yours and you've mastered it. Good. But in order to master this other thing, passion, and how to wield that, you need to free one hand at least in order to be able to hold that and make plans towards that. It's about balance. It's about being able to hold both things. But before you can hold both things, holding this other thing long enough to get comfortable with it, because you've already mastered the literal mind. You already mastered how to look at things rationally and intellectually. Good. You already know how to do that. We know you know how to do that. But you obviously struggle with this other aspect of it, which is the passionate side, the motive, the everything that exists beyond the literal way of looking at things. And in order to master that, you have to give it space. You have to surrender to not knowing how to do that in order to learn how to do it. And that's what I'm seeing here with these three cards. I hope that helped, and I'll catch you for the next one.